Hello, I'm Mike Gutierrez, and today I'm going to be talking about the EdTPA lesson plan template. So let's get started. First and foremost, the content focus is what you want students to come away learning or knowing. It's going to be the central focus of your entire lesson plan. So, for instance, you would have a question here that would assess or that is going to be answered, like causes of World War II. And then under essential literacy strategy focus, you just basically borrow language from a standard and you put it here word for word, verbatim. And again, standards, it would be the same thing. So you would just put your content standards, your Common Core standards. If you're in history, social science, you get the NCSS standards and put them here. It has to be something that you're actually going to be teaching on. If you're not going to hit on a subject, you would cross that out. Instruction or learning objectives is basically what you want students to know by the end of the class. And the assessment is the way the students are going to show you that they learned or that they know what was instructed on. So you can make a rubric or something to measure that. And you got to differentiate and specify whether it's going to be a summative or a formative assessment. Informal assessments would be if it's going to be like a thumbs up or a thumbs down to gauge whether or not they know the content, and formal assessment would be anything that you would grade. Language function, that's refers to anything that uses that's used to communicate. So you would use like one language function such as analyze. You know, you want students to analyze primary documents, for instance. And then additional language functions is basically you identify language demands required to achieve the objectives. Resources and materials, you basically put everything here that's going to be used for your lesson, whether it's going to be a whiteboard, laptops, worksheets, things like that. Student prior knowledge, if it's something that you guys have been working on maybe the week before, you just mentioned that here. How are you going to connect that to the new lesson plan? And then, so again, transition from a previous activity, it goes hand in hand with the assessing or talking about student prior knowledge. The hook is basically your icebreaker. How are you going to make this lesson kind of pop? And it could be a video, it could be a thought-provoking question that's on the board, and that's going to springboard you to talking about your topic that was discussed in the beginning. Focused instruction is modeling, so basically is what you're doing to establish what's expected of the students. So you can begin by writing down a sort of thesis and explain it to students. So you're modeling what is expected of them to do. Differentiating and scaffolds, that's going to account for your IEPs, your 504s, and your ELs. So how are you going to assist English learners? Are you going to allot more time for them? Are you going to give them maybe some specific questions that they have to answer because maybe they're a little bit easier on the academic language level? Guided instruction is how you will provide students the opportunity to practice what you taught. So you can have a quick pair share, or you can have some group work collaboration in which students are talking and engaging in this little process here. Again, scaffolding we already talked about. And independent practice, how will you provide students opportunities to master what they taught? So that's going to be the big project. So if it's going to be a presentation, you already gave them the opportunity to interact and develop their questions here. And then the independent practice is when they actually go up and present. Closure is how do you bring the class back together? How do you end it? You could have a informal assessment. Like I said, you can have them write a short answer of a focus question, sort of summarizing what they learned, and that would be like an exit slip that would be measurable and you can assess. Now let's talk about an actual lesson plan and see how that looks. So here, in this one, the central focus would be geographical differences between North and South of the United States during the antebellum era, so pre-Civil War. And then the essential strategy focus would be describe primary source images and identify cause and effect relationships regarding basic geographic features and how they shape in the different ways of life in the North and the South. So this is pulled from the standards, like I said. And here are all the standards. And like I mentioned earlier, you have to cross out what you're not going to use. And here are the CSS, Common Core, the ELD standards, instruction. Students will be, that's typically the language that we have to use. Students will be able to describe. Students will be able to identify. Those are the key words that I was mentioning. And then the assessments, informal, formal assessments. All right. Typically, you want one language function from what I understand, but two would be fine. You describe, you identify, and then here the language demands would be academic language that students normally don't use in everyday life. So antebellum, industrialization, things like that, things that are going to be in the lesson plan itself. Here are the materials, whiteboards, everything that you're using, even links. Student prior knowledge. So students will be able to recall, key differences. So that's pulling from prior knowledge. And then you talk about your activity here, or your little icebreaker, the hook, visual scenarios. So they're being asked to do something that's going to get them talking about geography. So you're floating down a river. Focused instruction, that's going to be what the teacher is doing for 12 minutes. Scaffolds are important, like I said, for students with disabilities, IEPs. And then you have your guided instruction. So you allow students to engage with the topic here. And then again, more scaffolding. And then the actual activity. So now you're grouping up the students and then allowing them to make their flow chart, and more scaffolds here. And then the closure, recap today's lessons. You turn in a flow chart. That's basically what you're going to be grading, and preview of the next lesson, and then cleaning up. So that's just kind of establishing a culture of being able to wrap things up. And that's about it.